Namaste and greetings. I, Nivedita Sinha, Research Intern at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to all of you to IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. We are gathered here today for IMPRI's fourth annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the interim union budget for the financial year 2024 to 25. This discussion is organized by IMPRI Climate Change and Sustainable Development as part of IMPRI's Web Policy Talk series. I welcome all of you to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for tuning into this discussion. Before we begin, let me introduce the esteemed gathering. We have Professor Krishna, visiting professor at IMPRI, professor at the Center for Economic Studies and Policy, Institute for Social Change, ISEC, Bangalore, India. We have Professor Sharad Lele, Distinguished Fellow in Environmental Policy and Governance at the Center for Environment and Development. We have Mr. Soumya Datta, Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI, Co-Convener of South Asian People's Action on Climate Crisis in New Delhi. Mr. Debaditya Sinha, Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI, Lead for Climate and Ecosystems, Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, New Delhi. We have Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI, Senior Editor, Political and Current Affairs at New Delhi Television Limited, NDTV, India. We have Dr. Madhu Verma, Senior Economic Advisor, IORA, Ecological Solutions, New Delhi. Welcome to all of you. We look forward to hearing from our esteemed panelists. Before we begin, I would like to call Priyanka, who will give a short presentation on the budget of 2024 and 2025. And over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Nivedita. Good evening, everyone. Myself, Priyanka Negi. I'm a researcher at IMPRI. Today, I'm here to present the basics of what was said in the budget 2024-2025 with regards to the domains of the Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. The fiscal blueprint for 24 to 25 reflects a deliberate commitment to catalyzing India's energy transition and bolstering sustainable practices across various sectors. Beginning with the Ministry of Environment, the increased budget estimate of Rs 3,265 crore signifies a dedicated effort to amplify our environmental conservation endeavors. This augmentation, up from 3,079.4 crore in the previous fiscal year, underscores the government's resolve to fortify our ecological resilience as we navigate the challenges posed by climate change. This financial infusion is poised to play a pivotal role in steering our environmental policies towards a more sustainable future, shifting our focus to the MNRE. The substantial increase in the budget estimate to Rs 12,850 crore from the Rs 10,222 crore amplifies our commitment to harnessing renewable energy sources. This boost is a testament to our dedication to the cause of a sustainable and clean energy. The government's emphasis on the MNRE budget reflects a strategic alignment with our national imperative to transition towards a greener, more eco-friendly energy landscape. The key highlight in the realm of energy transition is the allocation of INR 10,000 crore for the grid-based solar power scheme, a significant surge from the Rs 4,757 crore in the preceding fiscal year. This robust investment underscores our ambition to bolster solar energy infrastructure and expedite the shift towards cleaner power sources. Wind power has also received due attention with an allocation of INR 930 crores, contributing to the diversification of our renewable energy portfolio. A noteworthy initiative is the commitment to bring 10 million houses under the rooftop solar scheme, providing 300 units of free electricity each month. This step aligns with our vision for decentralized and sustainable energy production, empowering households and fostering energy self-sufficiency. The budget's thrust on offshore wind energy through viability gap funding for an initial capacity of 1 gigawatt demonstrates our commitment to exploring innovative and advanced solutions in the renewable energy sector. Furthermore, the ambitious plans for coal gasification and liquefaction, coupled with a significant allocation of 600 crore rupees for the National Green Hydrogen Mission amplifies our endeavors in transitioning towards a cleaner and more efficient energy sources. In the transportation and the e-mobility sector, continuing with the transition in the energy, the budget addresses the imperative of scaling up e-buses with a focus on payment security mechanisms, while the reduction in the budget for the scheme for faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles in India, FAME India, raises questions. The introduction of new schemes like biomanufacturing and biofoundry points towards a commitment to environmentally friendly alternatives. The unveiling of Blue Economy 2.0 signifies a strategic leap towards sustainable coastal development, aquaculture, and marine culture. The increased budget estimate for the Blue Revolution, which is interconnected with the Blue Economy 2.0, from rupees 1,500 crore in the 2023 to 24 to rupees 2352 crore in 2024 to 25, emphasizes our dedication to fostering a resilient and thriving blue economy. That's all from my side with regards to the budget. I would now like to invite the experts to take from here. Nivedita, over to you.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. It is now my honor and privilege to invite Professor Krishna Raj to start the program with the chair's opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Introduction about the interim union budget 2024-25. And I am glad to have a very distinguished scholarly panelist, including Professor Sarad Lile, Professor Madhu Verma, and all the other panelists, including Himamsu. He has not yet joined, I think, Himamsu.
Not yet, sir. I will check with.
Yeah, and Debaditya Sinha and
Soumya Datta sir has also joined.
Joined, but I could not see their presence. Okay, Soumya Datta also present. Okay, okay. So all the panelists are joined already. I think have joined.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Shall we begin or shall we wait for Imam? So because you told me that he is going to.
Sir, I will let you know, but we can start.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you, IMPRI, for organizing this very important panel discussion on the union budget, interim budget, and environment and sustainable development. As a initial remarks, I would like to emphasize that each speaker may get around 7 to 8 minutes, and we save time for discussion, and more time will be available for discussion, and also if audience they pose, we will have time to discussion. And if you let us continue then for directly to discussion. Now I'll make a initial remarks about the union budget, and later we can ponder on the issues. Some of the issues I would like to highlight in the context of union budget, and also overall status of environment and environmental resources in India. Yes, all of us know the union government has announced the interim budget, and in this interim budget it has not given very clear picture about the detailed investment on environment and other important programs, especially climate related programs. But allocation has improved. Just now the presentation made by the IMPRI, slightly allocation has been improved in MOUFCC and also for renewable energy and also energy transition programs. Overall, if you diagnose the economic development and economic growth in India, the government has been prioritizing the growth of GDP and growth of income, and the overarching policy of the government is to achieve development, that is developed country status by 2047. This is one of the biggest vision the country has right now. And the second thing is that, as you would know, at the same time, we are at crossroads. On the one hand, we have to achieve economic growth, and this economic growth should translate into income and also employment generation for all the population of our country. On the other hand, we have climate goals like achieving net zero emission by 2047. And in between, the government has committed to enhance the GDP from $3.5 trillion to $5 trillion by 2027. It has been revised. Earlier, it was targeted to achieve by 2024. Now it has been revised even by the World Bank and also the government of India. Of course, there are the three important resources that play an important role in economy. They are natural resources, human resources, and man-made resources or capital. However, the growth focuses more on enhancing the value of both man-made capital as well as human capital. And natural resources continue to be affected in the growth process. In this context, several policy measures have been taken by the government. Still, the environmentalists, ecologists, and sustainable development practitioners, they observe that these are inadequate to achieve sustainable development. These are some of the issues. So in this context, I would like to raise a few issues that may be taken up for discussion if any panelist, if they are interested. So the basic questions here that whether India's economic policy to become a developed country by 2047 reflects the aspiration, ethos, and values of the people of India. This is the first thing I want to raise. The second thing is that whether growth of per capita income or GDP is the only indicators to determine India as developed country by 2047. Whether the high growth rate is ecologically sustainable given the destruction of natural resources, and whether the high growth patterns distribute the income rightfully among all the people. And the final question is that, so can we find answer to some of the environmental problems we are facing through technology or technology can help resolve some of the environmental problems the present generation is facing, including the pollution maybe in the Delhi and other cities, and also the climate change and destruction of forest resources and biodiversity, and decline in the per capita availability of water resources and others. Of course, just budget gives the amount that should be earmarked for spending in various way. That does not reflect the quality growth or sustainable development path. But still, government is making several efforts to in align with the Paris Agreement to achieve net zero emission. And recently I was invited for Niti Aayog discussion on life economy, where the lifestyle changes have to be to address this 2040 net zero emission, both in production sector as well as in consumption sector. So if we adopt sustainable practices, certainly the demand for goods and services will decline. Whereas the vision for achieving 2047 development will be affected. If you allow consumption of more goods and services and at the same time production, that will invariably affect the environment. So therefore, the country India is passing through transition And in this transition, there are trade-offs. And therefore, this is a very interesting panel for our discussion, how the budget can help to achieve some of the sustainable developmental goals, and also the climate policy initiatives, and also take the country on sustainable development path. I stop here, and now I request Imamsu is already there, or shall I go ahead with the other panelist?
So please go ahead. He's in parliament. So
Okay. Now I invite Professor Sarad Lile to give his remarks on the budget, as well as analyze the budget and bring out some conclusive policy suggestion that can also be discussed after some time. So now 6:21, you may take 8 minutes, please.
Thank you, Krishna, and thank you for your prefatory remarks. The contrast between your remarks and the narrative read out by Priyanka from the budgetary speech was very palpable in terms of sort of looking at the deeper questions that are not obviously addressed in the budget. So I will start by a similar remark of my own, which sort of relates to what you said at the end, that budgets are a very limited window into India's commitment or otherwise towards solving environmental problems or mitigating environmental problems and promoting ecologically sustainable and equitable development. But especially in the context of environment, I mean, in all cases, of course, financial support for a program does not mean it will translate on the ground. This is a generic problem for anything from NREGS to building roads. But for environmental problems in particular, it is a problem in the sense that we cannot measure the efficacy or the strength of our commitment to environmental soundness by looking at the numbers in the budget, because a lot of environmental activity, pro-environmental activity, is about strong regulation, whether it is in the way environmental clearances are given, in the way forest clearances are given, with the way environmental disputes are resolved in the NGT, and so on and so forth. And regulation is not a very costly affair. So the NGT budget, even if you were to double the number of benches in NGT from 10 to 20, or even triple them, the extra budget that you would require is a drop in the ocean of the Ministry of Environment's budget. It would really not figure anywhere in the larger budgetary figures. So if the Ministry of Environment were to strengthen its environmental clearance process, again, this has very little budgetary implications. But if it were very serious about environmental clearance, you would see a very different outcome on the ground. So I want to just preface my comments by saying we cannot read a whole lot into the commitment towards the environment from quantitative numbers in the budget on the rupees to be invested or spent. Keeping that as a background, there are some indications, of course, of both sort of the good news and bad news in the budget. So let me first quickly spell out some of the bad news items. Interlinking of rivers is still very much present and still very much being funded. Nuclear projects are very much alive and still very much getting their big share of funding. The river conservation program, unfortunately, is underspent, which is again not a surprise. The Ministry of Environment's budget also has been underspent last year. So again, it kind of shows that you budget something, but you don't necessarily give them the freedom and support and the push to utilize the budget in a positive and meaningful manner. So, and indirectly, if you look at the department or ministry that is getting the biggest slice of the pie, and it's a huge slice, is Ministry of Defense, which cannot be good news for the environment in general, because if we are becoming more and more aggressive in our military posturing, certainly it's not going to have a positive fallout for us. Let me then come to some of the 2 or 3 prima facie good news stories. So the one that has been most talked about is the solar PV on household rooftops, and they claim that they will lead to so many lakh households getting free electricity up to 300 units, etc., etc. Now, when I look at the numbers and look at the commitment, first of all, the amount budgeted is very low, whereas the estimates of what it would require to achieve that kind of a target of 1 lakh, whatever those households that they are talking about, is 1 lakh crores. That is the kind of estimates that have come out in terms of the cost of solarizing so many kilowatts of electricity. Now, the bigger issue is how this has been conceived. One on the efficacy side and the second on the equity side. So the efficacy question is, the central government has only a limited role in reaching individual households for rooftop solarization. The main role is played by the local discoms, the distribution companies, because the household has to link up to the grid. And I can tell you from personal experience that that is the biggest bottleneck. I was willing to invest, and I have invested in solar PV on my rooftop, 3 kilowatts, at my expense, without taking even that 40% subsidy that MNRE was offering under some program, because the installing company said, sir, if you run after the subsidy, it could take you a year. So I didn't go for the subsidy. But the bottleneck was still the local discom, which raised a lot of problems in connecting to the grid, because they are really not interested in this. And you're from Bangalore, so you know that the BESCOM, the local company, had a grand target for rooftop solar, in the domestic rooftop solar, and it's far below that target because they are not really serious about it. Their frontline staff, are a big bottleneck, and so on and so forth. So they have a lot of limitations. Now, what this scheme is saying is that NTPC will be will install solar PV on people's rooftops. So there is a double jeopardy here. One is that NTPC does not link the solar rooftop solar to the grid. It is still the local discom which will approve the linking, and they will have all their usual inefficiencies and demands for various kinds of grease money to make it happen. Secondly, NTPC, which is a huge public sector undertaking known for its massive thermal power projects, 2,000 megawatt thermal power projects, or they're also into dam building. They are an elephant. They can only deal with massive projects. They have absolutely no capacity to go on individual rooftops and install solar PV of 1 kilowatt, 2 kilowatts, or 3 kilowatts. So it's a crazy idea to ask a large public sector undertaking to do this job when there are hundreds of players in the market who are doing an excellent job of installing rooftop solar. They are small players, which is a good thing. You want to encourage small business, and there are small players in very large numbers who are doing this job. So the problem is not the absence of an installing company, the company to, a good company to go and install. The absence is really of the system, the ecosystem in which there is really at the front line, there is no encouragement or many obstacles for solarizing. The second point is that who are these households who will be able to install 1, 2, or 3 kilowatt units? These are households like me or richer people than me who are in the top 10% of India's income class. Who owns a single building with a rooftop which is capable of installing 1 or 2 or 3 kilowatt? If you want to generate 300 units, you actually need roughly a 3 kilowatt unit system, not a 1 or 2 kilowatt system. So who is capable of doing that, and who's therefore going to grab that subsidy, that public money? It's going to be the top 10% of India's households, which means public money is being spent to subsidize the richest households in this country. And I think that's a huge equity issue. It's similar to the metro problem. Our metro is a good thing from an environmental perspective to the extent that it reduces our transport footprint. Yes, it's a good thing. It reduces congestion on the roads, so it's a good thing. But the cost per kilometer, passenger kilometer of metros is extremely high, and then they end up catering to a small fraction of the urban population, while all the poor people are still going by buses, public transport, if there is public transport in that city. Luckily, Bangalore has 15,000 VMTC buses. There are many cities in this country which don't have any public transport. Small towns don't have public transport. Entire states don't have public transport like Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh or Odisha. So I think we have a real problem of wherever we see some positive steps, they are going in the direction of elite solutions rather than solutions for the common person. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarad. You have clearly highlighted the effectiveness and equity issues of the interim budget 2024-25. I am really happy, and I'll come back on this, and let me invite others also. Now, shall I request Professor Madhu Verma?
Yeah.
Yes, madam, please.
Thank you, Professor Krishna. Thank you. Thanks to you, and thanks, Sharad, for setting the tone of the discussion and already highlighting the major points, major issues, challenges that we have been having. Of course, budget tries to resolve many such issues, but still some loopholes definitely are there, some gaps are there which need to be filled up through many more initiatives. Let me just first of all look at the so-called, quickly analyze the environment ministry's budget and allocation towards various activities, because I come from education sector. I worked in IFM for a long time now, working at IORA and taking action and policy research forward. Well, of course, there's a slight increase in absolute terms, the budget for the ministry, but there was a 0.07% decline in terms of total budget. But of course, if you look at allocation to regulatory bodies like Central Pollution Control Board, Central Zoo Authority, National Biodiversity Authority, Commission for Air Quality Management, there's budget has risen to 158.60 crores from this to 192 crores in this particular year. But also you find government has earmarked for 50 crore budget for as against 50 crore budget for integrated development of wildlife habitats. National Mission Green India also focus on forest cover and safeguarding existing forest land. Has also experienced a boost from 160 crores to 220 crores. But contrastingly, there's a decline in the educational sector allocation. If you look at GB Pant, the Himalayan Institute of Environment and Development, ICFRE, Wildlife Institute of India, allocation has decreased from 573 crores to 391. Very contrasting, considerable decline in the budget as such. I think this is high time that we need to sensitize masses, not to sensitize, people have to come up front in educational sector to understand about environment, climate change, forest, and all such sorts of ecosystems, and contribute as a cadre of professionals. We do have some institutions, but we do require these institutions to be strengthened and also, expanded such that if you have appreciation for this particular kind of, these ecosystems, then only you can take your argument forward by making all kind of technical, cultural, social kind of interventions. Well, of course, we see that, yes, of course, the interesting point that I find, which is a bit heartening, because our coastal areas have been quite, neglected for a very, very long time. The launch of Blue Economy 2.0 is focusing on, promoting climate resilient activities and sustainable development in coastal areas is a heartening or a welcome step, definitely. And it will prioritize restoration and, of course, adaptation measures, as well as expansion of coastal aquaculture and mariculture, as was presented in through the initial presentation as well, is a welcome step, definitely. And also expansion of mandate on green growth in terms of allocations for green initiatives such as biomanufacturing, biofoundry, climate resilient blue economy, electric mobility, and focus on clean energy and offshore and wind energy are quite heartening steps. But let me just also start from where what Arjun was mentioning at the beginning, that the vision of the budget is prosperous Bharat in harmony with nature, modern infrastructure, and opportunities for all. I would pitch in as an environmental economist, as all of us talking towards environment. I think when we talk about modern infrastructure, of course, we do talk about electric vehicles, solarization, all these things are being discussed, biofuels. But I think more requirement is of nature-based solutions in the system and establishment and strengthening of ecological infrastructure that we talk about, wetlands, rivers, mountains, forests. They provide such wonderful solutions at a very low cost. Nature-based solutions are, low-cost solutions, much more resilient, much more, harmonious, and they are in tandem with, what people have been following since ages. These are nature-based traditional mechanisms of, addressing problems of nature. I think there's urgent need for promoting nature-based solutions in the system, because we have rather experienced and not experimented, experienced for a very, very long time in engineering-based solutions, which are required definitely, but it requires huge complementarity through nature-based solutions. Secondly, when you say opportunities for all, I think larger masses, larger populations who are dependent so much on natural resources required green jobs. I don't think if I Google in this budget green jobs, I would even strike one success. So I think that's what is the need. Of course, through activities which are being highlighted, we'll be creating jobs. I think it's also important to highlight specifically that how many jobs that, talk about electric vehicles, green hydrogen, interventions in the marine aid, coastal areas, and in all the activities of the ministry. It's very important to highlight those things. And when you highlight, when you actually quantify, I'm an ecological economist, try to talk in the language of numbers. It's very important to actually understand what these interventions contribute to economic system in terms of what we say, nature's contribution to people or ecosystem services. I think budget is always done on a quid pro quo basis. More you contribute, more allocations you get for the next year for its management, for the promotion of your particular system or sector. But environmental sector suffers because quantification is still very, very weak. It's very important. We have a tagline for an international process called as the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. So we have to measure what we manage. It says measuring what we manage. Unless until we measure what we are providing, what we are losing, you cannot manage it properly. So very essential to provide economic value to the contributions made by environmentally benign activities and the damage done by environmentally taxing activities, and what we say assessing value of nature and doing green accounting. We are doing material accounting, physical accounting, unless until we add the value of degradation, value of conservation, and do the net value, then only we will get the clear picture, because these are all invisibles in the system. Suddenly COVID comes up, we don't know what happened, and then we landed up putting up so much of amount of mitigation damage, mitigation cost to that, and huge health cost comes into being. So this is what seeing the green mirror is very important. Otherwise you might pay very heavy health cost. The country's GDP might go up because so much investment and cost is going into the health sector for that particular purpose. But it should be more of more of a protection than for defense kind of mechanism. Secondly, also creating a cadre of incentivization or incentives, and what we also call as payment for ecosystem services that require a kind of a market-based structure, but you can always incentivize, encourage people, create, of course, we do have green credit scheme now at place, which will go further to take these kinds of considerations, but still it needs further promotion, establishment through budgetary interventions. So I think that's what I have to say right now, and continue in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Madhuvarma, for highlighting several important key aspects of the environmental issues the country is facing. Especially, you highlighted the very scarce allocation for environmental research, especially Himalayan studies, Himalayan institutes, ICFRE and others. And also you highlighted why nature-based solutions are very important, and also green jobs and green accounting and payment for ecosystem services that should be integral part of our GDP and also accounting system while estimating our welfare. Use, and that would be the cost we are incurring these days. And you highlighted almost all the very good points. I'll take it forward, your discussion further later, and I'll invite now Mr. Himamshu Shekhar. You are there. May I request you to speak for 7 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, sir. You can hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead, Himamshu.
Yeah.
I know you are very busy, and we are waiting for your
Prime Minister's speech is going on now in Lok Sabha.
Correct.
On the president's address, so just doing a series of live broadcasts. Just waiting for him to finish his speech. But thank you very much, sir. I wish to make a small PowerPoint presentation. I had shared the PPP with Arjun, sir. I request him to just show if it is possible.
Yes, we are doing that.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. As we know that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has announced a slew of measures for the promotion of green growth and renewable energy in interim budget. And the first major announcement was rooftop solarization. 1 crore households to be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. And I can tell you, I was in Ayodhya when Prime Minister had actually announced a new scheme on January 22nd, which was called Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana. And under this Yojana, the target was to install rooftop solar on 1 crore houses. And Prime Minister was very specific. He said that the power of the sun must be harnessed by common man. And this Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana is part of that larger initiative to encourage and promote renewable energy. And this, of course, has been given primary space in the budgetary proposals by Finance Minister. And the thinking is that this will help not only reduce electricity bills of the poor and the middle class, but will also push India's goal of becoming self-reliant in the energy sector. Now, Finance Ministry has actually outlined these are the broader objectives of this scheme. Savings up to 15 to 18,000 rupees annually per household from free solar electricity and selling the surplus to the distribution companies, charging of electric vehicles, entrepreneurship opportunities for a large number of vendors for supply and installation. We have seen that in Rajasthan, where the state government had announced such a scheme. There a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities were created. Employment opportunities for the youth with technical skills in manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. So there are multiplier effects of deciding to set up 1 crore rooftop solarization. And this is expected to help boost also economy and the energy sector. Green energy, Prime Minister, in fact, while responding to the big debate in Lok Sabha just now, has mentioned that green energy is a priority area for his government and has mentioned about different initiatives that were taken to promote green energy in the last 5 years. In the budget, with the aim of meeting the commitment of net zero by 2070, FM has proposed the following measures. One, viability gap funding to be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy potential for initial capacity of 1 gigawatt. Coal gasification and liquefaction capacity of 100 metric tons to be set up by 2030. This is also the year by which India has to achieve its SDG goals. This will also help in reducing imports of natural gas, methanol, and ammonia. And we do know that the uncertainties in the global oil and energy market because of developments in West Asia, the Israel-Gaza war, and then the attack from Iran and other countries in Israeli territories. We know this has become a zone of uncertainty, and even the crude oil prices have been fluctuating. So this has affected that. So this is also a part of that larger strategy to reduce gradually, incrementally, the imports of natural gas. Now, the next important proposal that FM announced was phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas in compressed natural gas for transport and piped natural gas for domestic purposes to be mandated, and financial assistance to be provided for procurement of biomass aggregation machinery to support collection. This was also an important proposal that FM had announced. Now, she also spoke about the need to adopt e-buses for public transport networks and also explained the intent of the government to encourage, through payment security mechanism, a greater adoption of e-buses for public transport networks. And we will see more action on this front as the year passes by. And she very categorically said that our government will expand and strengthen the e-vehicle ecosystem by supporting manufacturing and charging infrastructure. This is again a work in progress. And if you just look at the data that has been shared by the industry association, which works on e-vehicles, that there is a very significant, last time I checked, there was a 600 to 700% increase in sale of electric vehicles in the country, especially the two-wheeler segment. And these are initiatives which is designed actually to create a far more vibrant and viable ecosystem to promote electric vehicles. And this strategic initiative will focus on both manufacturing and charging infrastructure, aiming to fortify and broaden the landscape for electric vehicles. State governments will be encouraged as part of this initiative. And this is a point that I've already made. And I think this is what the Surface Transport Ministry had to say on the e-buses adoption front. A press release said that this is part of government's plan to encourage the widespread adoption of electric buses to promote an eco-friendly and energy-efficient mode of commuting. This will be facilitated through the implementation of a payment security mechanism, fostering confidence among e-bus operators. Now, we know that Prime Minister Modi has adopted the vision of making the country carbon neutral by 2070. And in a statement issued on the budget day, the Ministry of Heavy Industry said, this proactive step reflects the government's commitment to fostering a cleaner and greener future with an emphasis on building a robust foundation for the sustainable growth of the electric vehicle industry. Now, on biomanufacturing and biofoundry also, FM has proposed a new scheme which will provide environment-friendly alternatives such as biodegradable polymers, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals, and bio-agri inputs. I request Arjun sir to play the next slide. Yeah. So as you can see, to promote the green growth, this is a new scheme that has been proposed for biomanufacturing and biofoundry. And idea is, of course, as I said, to provide environment-friendly alternatives such as biodegradable polymers, bioplastics, biopharmaceuticals, and bio-agri inputs. On the budget front, if you just look at the money that has been allocated for this financial year, and of course, this is an interim budget, government will revisit these figures when a new government is formed and the full budget is presented in the first week of June. We'll know more about government's intent. But for now, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has been allocated 3,265 crores. This is slightly higher, 34 crore more than what was earmarked last year. But as many experts have actually raised concern that this is just 0.07% of the total estimated expenditure. In interim budget, the budgetary allocation for institutions such as Central Pollution Control Board, the Central Zoo Authority, the National Biodiversity Authority, and the Commission for Air Quality Management has been increased from 158 crore to around 192 crore. So this is a work in progress. A lot of concern about why the budget is not being hiked. We will know perhaps a bigger picture will come in June when a full-fledged budget is proposed. But even in the interim budget, I was just counting, there are some 6-7 important proposals have been announced. I can tell you that I was in Ayodhya last month, and in an interview to me, the district magistrate of Ayodhya said that Government of India has decided to set up a solar city in Ayodhya. And this is part of the larger initiative to encourage power and renewable energy companies to invest more money into renewable energy. And as part of this larger initiative, this solar city is being built up. So we do see a lot of sincere action on the ground. But as some experts have raised concern that why the allocation for Environment Ministry is not being increased, because we know that this is an age of climate change. We know that this is also an age where the intensity, the frequency, the scale of disaster incidents are continuously rising. And we have seen one of the worst disasters in recent years. So there's a need to actually work more on climate change. There is a need to revisit the Disaster Management Act of 2005, which is now 19-year-old. Unfortunately, concepts like climate change, sustainability do not even find mention in our Disaster Management Act. So there's a need to revisit the legislative framework that we have. There's a need to revisit the policy frameworks that we have so that we can more effectively actually address these concerns. And the impact on farmers, especially, this is a subject that we have discussed last year. And I've personally seen farmers struggle with the impact of climate change. Now, just last year, to just give you a context, in February, there was an unseasonable rain, which had a very bad impact on wheat crops in Western UP. Then in March, again, we saw unseasonal hailstorm, which destroyed parts of crops in Western UP. Then in April, there was concern about above average temperature and how it could actually affect the cropping patterns in Western UP. So I've met large number of farmers who were increasingly bewildered by this sudden change in the climate. And I think that is that concern that farmers are actually facing on the ground, which is also having an impact. I remember a farmer who used to grow rice during the Kharif season. He told me that I'll be sowing sugarcane this time because I can't face the vagaries of nature. And it is becoming more and more uncertain actually to do agriculture. So I think this is one subject that I think we should expect FM to give a far more concerted attention. That is the challenge of climate change when she or any new government, when they appoint a finance minister, when the new budget is actually presented in Lok Sabha in the first week of June by the new government, we should expect far more attention to the subjects and the challenges posed by climate change, especially on the agrarian economy. But for now, I think in the interim budget, she has outlined 6-7 priority areas, but I think a lot more needs to be done.
Thank you,
Thank
Iman. Views on the revisiting of Disaster Management Act to 2005 to bring more legislation to implement these programs more effectively. Very good point, which is well taken. Now, shall I move on to
Krishna, you have muted yourself.
Soumya Datta, may I request you to speak for 7 to 8 minutes?
Yes, thank you very much.
Kindly accept my apologies. I have to join for another TV debate at 7:25 positively because GST is a big issue and the government of Karnataka is hesitating against central government tomorrow at New Delhi, and they invited me for some discussion and I have to leave. If you
That's
all
a good
permit me.
education.
Yeah.
GST is a very stupid acceptance by the
government
states.
against government. Yeah.
No, that's true. Accepting GST was a stupid step by state governments. They surrendered their fiscal independence to the central government and now are subject to arm twisting.
Yeah. Thank you. Please
It's
go ahead with
good that
your.
the state governments are agitating.
Right.
Thank you for inviting me. So, should I start?
Yes, please, Soumya Datta, please.
Okay, so good evening to everyone. Let me point out that quick points and we'll come back to this to explain. One is a lot of the things that have been used as a terminology, green economy, green jobs, blue economy. We need a better understanding of this because if you go to the communities and if you look at what the plans for blue economy is, we have done this exercise. It's actually excluding a lot of coastal communities. It is dispossessing them from their rights over fishing of the waters of the coastal lands. So I'm not going into detail. What I'm saying is just accepting blindly a blue economy is a green thing, is a good thing. A green something means a good thing for environment is not looking at it critically. That's one thing. Second point, that major point that I want to highlight before going into details is that a budget is not just allocation. The budget also has a role through incentives and disincentives to promote good things and to discourage bad things. If you look at like transportation, some of you have talked about electric vehicles, promoting electric buses and all. There are 2 points, important points to understand here. If you look at the budget allocations, the roads and highways, road transport and highways got 2.78 lakh crores. And it's substantially being increased every year. And if you know the science, road transport is the most polluting form of transport after air transport. So there is no disincentive for reducing air transport. In fact, last several years, this has been encouraged. And air transportation, short-haul flights are 6 to 8 times as polluting as train transport, railway transport. So one good thing is this year at least the railways have got a increased budget. So that's a good thing. But as simultaneously, road transport has got a big increase, and road transport, expressways, highways, it's mostly used by cars with small occupations. And these are as polluting as flights, short-haul flights. So if you look at Delhi or any big city in India, or not even big city, even tier 2 cities, the amount of air pollution, that's another thing. This National Clean Air Program I'd also like to mention. The amount of air pollution has not come down over the years in spite of all the halla-wulla, all the focus. And one major reason is the explosive growth of both private cars, and within private vehicles, private cars, not only two-wheeler, private cars, four-wheelers, the growth of private diesel vehicles. And there is, in spite of this being pointed out to the government earlier, there is absolutely no word on disincentivizing private diesel vehicle. Again, a diesel vehicle emits 6 to 8 times as many particulates as an roughly equal capacity petrol vehicle even. Forget about CNG and electric. So these are major issues where we are given a sort of facade, something green, but the major contributor to the pollution are not at all addressed. If you look at what India, and I would like to connect it also, if you see what Indian government has done in the COPs, where the climate COPs are being talked about. India has refused to sign the methane pledge in Glasgow. India has refused to sign the stopping deforestation pledge with the logic that it refers to India's international trade in forest products. So there are very funny actions being taken where we are being fed simultaneously that we are going green. One good aspect that is there, that is most panelists have already mentioned, is that 1 crore home solar installation. But what Sharad pointed out is very valid, because DISCOMs have actually a conflict of interest. Why should I reduce my possibility of getting revenue by letting the individuals who are my customers to generate their own electricity and sell it to me? So unless there is a simultaneous measure to take it out of the DISCOM's domain and do it through somewhat which has a far better interface with the users and consumers, this scheme again will not succeed. Like, the Kusum scheme existed for several years. Kusum has a big target of having solar installation, solar pumps, solar installation, solar power stations, mini solar power stations by farmers in their own lands. And that has not, success rate is very low, less than 50% in the 2 of the schemes out of the 3, Kusum A, B, and C. So this is the problem that is there. The other thing that I would also like to point out, that many of the, when we are talking about electrification, electric buses, solar PV, wind energy, these have got some incentives, some increased allocation. What we don't realize is only 16 to 17% of India's primary energy is consumed in the electricity form. The rest 84% or 83% is consumed in terms of coal, oil, and gas. So we are not talking about that. Our continuous emphasis is increased coal, increased oil, increased gas. Gas means natural gas. The budget, I'll not go into details, but you can understand. The primary sources of pollution, not only for greenhouse gases, but also particulates, which are extremely harmful for health. There are estimates which show that something like 1.9 million people, the premature deaths happen in India because of air pollution. What happened to the National Clean Air Program? What is the allocation? The entire, you have said, some panelists have said, Environment Ministry's budget has been increased. Actually, it has been decreased. If you look at the real term, inflation adjusted, last year average inflation is how much? Around 5.5%, 5.6%. So 3,231 to 63 is actually a significant decrease of the budget. What happened to the budget for National Clean Air Program? It's extremely pathetic situation, because the 131 or so non-attainment cities, they are not getting enough, forget about enough money, any significant money. The 99 cities who have the continuous ambient air quality monitoring stations, even their things are not improving because they are not getting resources. What happened to the climate action plans? The center asked all the states for developing their state action plans on climate change, CECCSD, and it was done. Not only the first version, the second versions of the revised version of the state climate action plans have already come. But what the states are pointing out, that you have told us all these 8 to 11 to 12 sectors where we made the plans. Where is the budget? The center says, no, you are not going to give the money. So where is the money going to come from? You can say that we have done this plan, done that plan, but there is no budgetary allocation for that. There is no support for that. So that's a big stumbling block of achieving any kind of climate resilience, adaptation and climate resilience, building of communities. So I think like there is a allocation for coal gasification, 8,500 or something crore. Coal gasification don't take out the pollution. You are still burning the part of the coal, you are converting into gas. Part of the coal pollution will come into the leakage into the groundwater, part will come back in the atmosphere. So instead of directly burning the coal, you are just taking it via media, which will, at the point of burning, you are reducing the pollution, but overall pollution actually you are not reducing by much. So all these are hidden inside the green language, the green blue language. So the blue economy, what does it mean? And what are the kind of things that the government has accepted? It's enclosures, excluding traditional uses, the conservationist lobby approach. So that we cannot just talk about environment in exclusion of people in our country, in exclusion of communities which have lived there for centuries and millennia and actually conserve those environments. So we are seeing continuously a push for large-scale enclaving, enclosures, where the pristine, quote-unquote, pristine environment will be preserved. Rest of the coastline, if we are talking about environmental issues, entire coastline is being planned for ports and power plants. Does a port, and go to Vijinjam, go to any other big port, go to Mundra, you see the impact. It's not only along the ports, it's 50 kilometers this side, 50 kilometers that side of the port, and 5 to 8 kilometers, even the plumes go into 5 to. There are a large number of coastal power plants being planned, including nuclear that Charles talked about. Jaitapur is again being pushed, a lot of other this. So I think with 2-3 good intentions, good proposals, like as I said, I support this 1 crore private house being solarized, but this needs to be done in a fashion which gets implemented. There is a mechanism to do that. Otherwise, after 2-3 years, we'll again come to the Kushum kind of thing, or India's commitment or pledge, not commitment, pledge in the NDC, that by before NDC also the Prime Minister announced, but at Glasgow he also announced that we'll do with this 4 lakh to 30,000 megawatt of renewable. Now it has been increased to 5 lakh. So 50% of installed capacity will be renewable. But we have not achieved the part of the domestic, that rooftop part. We have achieved only 1/5 or so of the domestic part. That is the rooftop. Not even the utility scale part we have achieved in full. And till now, I'll finish with this, we are only roughly at 30 some percentage of the 2030 target. It might be achieved, but again, just solarizing and converting to wind, does the renewable part in the electricity will not address the environmental concerns, will not address even the pollution concerns, because the environmental concerns are larger than the pollution concerns. But even to address the more narrow pollution concerns, you need to address the entire primary energy basket, not 16 to 17% of the basket and forget about the rest. Because if you continue to import and burn petroleum in that rate, what are you going to do with the this PM 2.5 and even PM1 particles, which should be also one of the concerns. So I think with a few exceptions, we have not seen much change in this budget. It's still largely greenwashing, blue and greenwashing now, and largely again targeted to large scale, big infrastructure, whereas the millions, the crores of community members who are dependent and who could have been co-opted in this work, like I really appreciated the Kushum scheme if it was implemented well. That could have changed the way the India's at least electricity sector would have developed. So this has not gone in that direction. Again, there is an exception, a couple of exceptions that I really appreciate, but largely It is again that large scale infrastructure, big things where the inherent or embedded pollution is hidden from public, because you will not consider that once you like electric vehicles over a long term are lower emitting, even with say 60%, even if your electricity grid is supplied 60% by coal, electric vehicles, cars will be lower emission life cycle basis over a longer term. But what we don't normally question is all these are front loaded. So right away, your pollution is much higher than even an internal combustion engine. So those are not at all taken into account. I think once we question, and again, last point, budgetary, to repeat it, budget is not just allocation. The allocations to key sections of the economy, which could have made the environment better, is low. But beyond that, the incentives and disincentive part is really, really disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soumya Datta, for your critical analysis on the policies of the government, especially the budget and announcements, and your statement, especially on the budget should bring a behavioral changes to incentives and disincentives, and holistic policy is missing in this budget. I really appreciate your thought-provoking intervention. Now, may I request Debaditya Sinha?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Raj. And I was listening to all the speakers, and I think they already covered most of the parts which I wanted to say.
Yes, yes.
They're all learned person and much more experienced than me. And so here I will just put some remarks and some observations from this budget from purely a conservationist view, like as a conservationist, as a person who cares for environment, biodiversity, forest, how I see this budget. So first of all, we must understand that this was a election budget. So usually, interim budget, we don't expect much big reforms. So governments usually submit the book of accounts, and there is one more budget which is yet to come after elections, maybe the monsoon session. So that time we may see revision of the budget. So the expectations were very low, but I was very much interested in seeing the last year's records. Like in the budget, they also submit this demand along with the demand note for each ministry. They have this revised estimates, and if you go through all the revised estimates and the budget and demand note, then you can fairly make a guess that what should be what the government has been performing on the environmental front, what their priorities are, and how they see this sector as a whole. For any sector, environment is just one of the ministry. Now I want to start with this thing that why the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change exists. If you ask the mandate of the ministry, it is protection, conservation of environment, forest and climate change. Simple words with the name, we go by the name. This mandate is not to facilitate industries and all these things. So the purpose is for this is we have Minister of Commerce, we have Minister of Corporate Affairs, everything is there. The purpose of Ministry of Environment Forest is to make sure that our development is not unsustainable. There is a thing called mitigation hierarchy in environmental law and any environmental policies that avoidance, minimize, restore, offset. So basically, if some activity has the benefits are lower than the cost, then you should not do it. Cost in terms of environment, social, or whatever you say. So Minister of Environment job, I think, primarily is to avoid any activity which may be actually causing more harm. If we decide to do anything, then we should do in a way that it doesn't, the impact is minimum. So all these things are there. Now, if I see this budget, this document presented by the minister, so last year, if I compare with last year, it's important to compare with last year, because last year we saw huge reform in the way the Ministry of Environment and Forest was funded. For example, Project Tiger Elephant was merged. There were programs called this Climate Action Plan, and there was a component called Awareness, Natural Awareness, all were removed from the central sponsor scheme, and they were made part of the secretariat. So that gives more discretion to the government to spend how the money will be spent, whether money will be spent at all on the awareness or not. Because I think not only like last year they said, green growth is the thing which, and there was whole glamorization of this. I know if you see the budget of this finance minister last year, it was all about green growth. Every second sentence was about environment and all this thing. But we also need to understand that Ministry of Environment first work is also to reduce the consumption by raising awareness on all this thing. Now, if I see the actual, the purpose of Ministry of Conservation of Environment Forest, there are two kinds of schemes, central sponsors schemes for the states, because the implementation has to be from the state. If you talk about forest, because concurrently forest and wildlife is concurrent biodiversity. So if you see the components, the conservation of natural resource and ecosystems, and I will touch upon it, and I will say this National Mission for Green India and this development for wildlife habitats. Now, last year we said we have launched so many schemes for afforestation. So the fund allocation is almost kept same. Last year we couldn't spend the money. Of course, this afforestation program has their own problems. We have seen that anything you do industrial scale, afforestation can also cause more damage to the ecosystem than what you think, because you don't want to plant trees on the river banks, on the scrub forest or the central Indian landscape. So afforestation has different problems at all. The problem is that when government approves any budget and you push the budget through the states, then the state, it follows to the district level, and they feel forced to do this plantation. The target is there. So there your thoughts about environmental assessment and what needs to be done, not need to be done. So they get overpowered. Usually the system should be that this is the need and then I should go for the budget. But now when you prepare budget first, then it influences the policy in a reverse way. So that is one thing. Now, if you talk about biodiversity conservation, now speakers was telling that the budget of CECCSD and all these bodies, CPCB, has increased. Very good. I think capacity building has to be done. So if it's good that they are increasing the funding of WII, very good, like Premier Institute of Wildlife Studies, their budget increase. But what is the benefit of improving budget of the institutions, academics, if we can't spend the money allocated for you for actual conservation, and very less money? If you see, the budget of 2023 last year for conservation national resource system was 47 crores, and the revised estimate 25 crores. And you hardly spend the money which was actually meant for conservation of biodiversity and ecosystems. Now, if you see the Project Tiger, Project Elephant was merged last year. Now, these are the two premier projects for conserving species. Now, when we say tiger and elephant, it includes into ecosystem. It includes all the wildlife corridors, includes all the PAs like network, all this thing. Now, last year, 332 crores something was allocated for this Project Tiger and Elephant combined, and we hardly spend less than 240 crores. And if you see the budget of this year for both this habitat development and biodiversity conservation, it is very, very less than what it was the last year. So there's significant decrease in the actual conservation work on ground. Although we are seeing improve this NTCA budget has increased, National Tiger Conservation Authority. No, authority budget is increasing, but the actual conservation work on ground, you are not serious about spending the money. Now, other thing is, I'm sure this may be related to Cheetah project. Now I have to mention about this thing. This NTCA, now their additional duties also this Cheetah Introduction Project Kuno. It's the species from Africa they're bringing, and there's a whole we all see how much money is being spent. Now, whether we want to promote bringing a foreign species on Indian soil and we hardly talk about the Indian biodiversity, can we really think about it? Other thing is that we have a National Biodiversity Authority, which is a very important authority which ensures that the benefit of the biodiversity resources are equitable with the local people communities. And we have seen just by one NGT order, all the biodiversity management committees were formed within few months. And we all know, if someone from government is sitting there, they may agree. The DMC exists on paper. There was a huge need to infuse capacity in this biodiversity monitoring committees. People's biodiversity register. The budget of National Biodiversity Authority is also reduced. I think, if I'm not wrong, I don't have the figure right now in front of me, but I think National Biodiversity Authority's budget is also decreased. And this new commission on air quality, which last year government has constituted, their budget is also decreased. So real things which actually affect us as a human being, as of health, biodiversity, which are I think once you lose the biodiversity, even today I am in Bihar attending a international workshop on bird trade and everything, and some gentleman from government ministry only, he was saying that Siberian cranes have stopped coming to India now. Okay. And the loss is once a flyaway is lost, the bird stops coming to a place, they will stop forever. They will not come again. Okay. So, this kind of impact we have to think, right? There are certain things which once you lose, you will not get it back. And no amount of engineering, no amount of investment can recreate our ecosystems and bring the species from extinction. GIB, we are talking about GIB, we are talking so much about conservation, you are increasing so much budget of MOFCC. Now tell me, does it take hardly 2 or 3% of the profit of these power companies from Rajasthan to invest on the underground cable? That also they are refusing to do. So my question is that as a government, we are not able to convince the companies, okay, fine. Can we not invest some money in saving the species? Less than 100 species of GIB are remaining in India. What we are doing for the species? So these are very fundamental questions. I think the budget, when I see this budget, it also it pains me actually, upsets me. We are talking about, I'm not saying that I'm against growth. We need development. We need this economic growth. We have one of the huge populated country. But somehow, somewhere, we have to also make a share of that profit to also invest in the species conservation, ecosystem conservation. So I think this is what I think this whole
interesting views you have expressed. Especially, I am really appreciate your views on decentralized policy for environmental conservation. Is a very good point. As states should be taken into account while considering the environmental policies, and bottom-up approach is the issue. And also, even though budget allocates, but unspent money is more, and expenditure incurred is also very less. So this clearly shows that the seriousness of the government.
So we are spending on infrastructure of the authorities.
Yes, yeah.
Actual conservation work, we are not spending that much money.
Yeah,
for whom we are spending this money? Whom we are building infrastructure, building the institutions. Like if you are not able to spend the money for conservation.
Correct. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Devaditya. Now we have come to almost all the panelists. They have spoken very well. You can come online and we can have a debate and discussion for 7 to 8 minutes. Then we will wind up. Shall we take questions also, Dr. Arjun, if you permit us? Are there any questions the participants can ask to a particular panelist? Or shall I make some observations?
So we do not have any open questions at the moment.
Okay.
So it would be feasible if the experts go for a discussion and later we can take them.
Yeah, excellent. Views have been expressed by each panelist from their own experience in their research. And especially Professor Sarad Lile has highlighted how this solar energy program is more ineffective and also inefficient in terms of equity issue is being concerned. And it does not reach out to the poor and who do not have even a roof, how they can go for the solar energy. This is one of the well taken point from the Sarad, and he criticizes some of these policies. They should work for all, not for a few companies. And also Professor Madhu Verma has clearly highlighted policies, economic policies, they are not green oriented, and we need to have a green accounting or green GDP. That is the principle one should have in our approach. Then only we can make effective sustainable developmental policies. So if you come to Himanshu, and he questioned some of the outdated policies and how new legislations have to be brought out to make more effective implementation of the environmental policies. And Soumyadatta is critical about some of these policies, especially the coastal areas are being violated because coastal areas, they have their own policies. And the construction activity and infrastructure development along the coastal areas can affect the coastal communities and also the coastal environment. And some of these national clean air programs and others also, they have not taken into account the most of the pollutants there are. Even EV, he questioned. Of course, I also have the concerns about electric vehicles, especially the battery issues, how to manage the batteries, especially in order to extract the cobalt. We are using lots of water, and that cannot be sustainable energy, and that also cannot be a sustainable technology in future. Of course, the last speaker also highlighted the policies which are not recognizing the importance of ecosystem services, biodiversity conservation, and also forest conservation. So overall, it was a very good debate, I can say, and all the panelists have highlighted the concerns the Indian nation is facing, especially in environmental sector is concerned. I open up for some more discussion if time permits. 4 minutes.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
I could just make a additional point, Krishna.
Yes, please.
I want to go back to your introductory comments, and I think those are really pertinent because, as some others have also pointed out, this is an interim budget. We can't really hope for any radical reforms or changes in such a budget anyway. So, in that sense, if you want to look at the bigger picture, I wanted to pick up the point that you made about the tensions that a country like ours with huge economic disparities faces between, on the one hand, needing to have development, on the other hand, needing to conserve the environment or protect the environment, and so on. And I feel that there is a way to resolve this tension, because the first thing, as you rightly said, we should not be looking at GDP as a measure of development in any sense. It is neither because of the content nor because of the distribution. GDP per capita tells us nothing about distribution, and we can see very clearly its growth. We are seeing increasing GDP per capita, but not necessarily increasing. Even the economic incomes of the poor are not rising. Number one, and economic incomes do not reflect well-being more generally. We have to worry about multidimensional well-being. The tension, so therefore, casting growth versus environment or development versus environment is a little misleading, because we have to understand that we can have the development of a certain class, the growth or the economic well-being of a certain class at the expense of another class. Yeah. And thermal power, coal mining, these are some classic examples. Just today I was reading a small bit of good news where the NGT finally ruled against a particular environmental clearance given to a mine in Tamnar Ghargoda in the Raigad district of Chhattisgarh, after a fight of many years by a very small band of committed local people. And the overall picture is still very sad, which is that we are allowing more mines to come up without due diligence on the environmental clearance side, and destroying local livelihoods, polluting their air, destroying their forests, polluting their water, destroying their water resources, as the open cast mine actually brings the water from the groundwater into the mine itself. So you can see and who is the mine benefiting? The coal is being burnt, thermal power plants to supply it to these 100 units plus households. The industrial
macroeconomy for
the industrial economy, which benefits a certain section of society. So we can easily visualize, I think, a different form of development where you could, for instance, even solar power, you could think of community solar power projects which would benefit the community with a full subsidy from the government. The government here is talking about subsidizing rooftop solar for people who have roofs, but you should be instead subsidizing 100% those who don't have roofs, as somebody rightly pointed out, that it's the roofless which need to be targeted. And you should be putting taxpayer money in helping them set up, whether it is community solar power, whether it is community water storage structures, which will meet their particular small requirements of water and so on. So I think we can easily visualize a different model of development, not growth, but development, which brings relief and improves the lot of the poor, without obviously leading to the rich making piles of money more from dividends from large companies, and saving the environment at the same time.
Yes, very good point.
It's possible.
Yes, we need to address these distributional issues and equity issues, very important from both the economic and environmental point of view. Very good points. Yes. So shall we wind up? If there are
Soumya has his hands up, Soumya and Madhu.
Soumya and Madhu, can you quickly?
See, I just wanted to respond to the question that has been posed in the chat, I think.
Okay, I'll just
Somebody,
read.
when someone is posed a question, I just given a thought and answer. But this is a large area that is opening up in many of these southern countries. This is the area of carbon sequestration in farming. And this is actually, this is linked with also one of India's earlier effort on RED Plus and RED readiness, and then the pledges of increasing carbon stock. But this is not on the forest. This is on the farming area. See, and recently, if you have noticed, the Ministry of Agriculture, I think, has come out with a framework for carbon sequestration in the farming domain. The question is on that, carbon sequestration on the farming domain, with the idea that farmers, since they are supposedly sequestering carbon, which actually is not, they should be compensated. But the problem here is, even if you forget about the issue that in the present mode of industrial agriculture, industrial modes of agriculture, where tractors, machines, fertilizers, pesticides, everything is going. So that is actually carbon positive. But even if you forget about that,
there are several methodological issues to arrive at the payment.
But even if you forget about that, the very basis of finding out how much extra carbon your field has sequestered over a period of time, all this needs continuous, what I will call surveillance of farmers' fields. And that's actually is happening, because there are two large-scale projects which are already launched in India. One by a North America-based company, Indian origin person launched that company, and they have got some big funding support from some funding agency outside in the US. And they are tied up with some of the organizations that work with small farmers. What is happening is now they are getting all the data, nutrient, moisture, everything, pH, data from the farmers' fields. They are saying that they're getting the data by satellite, but this can be also by drone. They are also started dictating what kind of farming practices you should do so that your field gets more carbon sequestered in the soil as soil carbon, as organic soil carbon. So this has a big danger. One, the entire data of farmers will be concentrated in a few hands who are giving little bit of money, very little amount of money. And after the consultants, validators, certification, very little reaches the farmers. Second is the food sovereignty or food security that the farmer might have without this will go into another direction, because this is being started under a directive of a company which want your soil to sequester more carbon, not necessarily to grow more climate resilient food. So that's a big danger.
Thank you, Soumya, Datta. Now may I request Dr. Madhu Verma for brief remarks.
Very quickly, first of all, of course, the issue of connecting to agriculture again, issue of crop burning is also a very important aspect.
Correct.
I think I didn't find much mention of that in the current budget. I think it requires huge attention, because now I live in Delhi, I realize.
Yes.
Like you face this, during the crop burning times, so incentivizing farmers instead of, facing the impact of crop burning. Secondly, also not being a woman, I just also want to highlight that environment and gender are so strongly related to each other. I think the entire the vagaries of nature and the impact of damage of ecosystems are hugely, borne by the women who actually depend so much on these ecosystems, natural resources. They're the custodians in many places, and so it's very much required to have gender need-based, budgeting of environment, definitely, because that would greatly solve various issues that, women face challenges in terms of, accessing resources, and also degradation is happening and impact is being felt. But just very quickly wanted to add.
Thank you, Professor Madhu Verma. I think time is up for me, and I thank each and every panelist for their very insightful analysis of the budget, and also the very critical analysis on the way the India is moving on sustainable developmental policies. And I thank each one of you for having time for this panel discussion. I also thank IMPRI for organizing this very important panel discussion on interim union budget and environment. And it is, I think, a very good message has gone to the society with your inputs. Seriously think over on all these issues, critical issues, to bring a renewed policies to help to achieve efficiency and effectiveness in the environmental policies. With this, shall I conclude, Dr. Arjun?
Yes, yes, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
one and
everyone.
thank you one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Nivita can go for a vote of thanks.
I
Yes.
extended already. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. So as we come to the end of the discussion, I'm Nivedita Sinha, I'm Research Intern at IMPRI, and I would like to propose yet another really short formal vote of thanks. On behalf of IMPRI, I would like to thank all of you for attending today's deliberation on the 4th annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of the interim union budget of the financial year 2024 to 25. We're really grateful to our chair, Professor Krishna Raj, and all of the panelists for the session. I would like to extend a formal thanks to Professor Sharad Lele, Professor Devaditya Sinha, Professor Madhu Verma, Dr. Himanshu Shekhar, and Dr. Soumya Datta for taking part in the session and enlightening us. Thank you to all the participants who participated in today's session. We are extremely grateful to you for watching us on our YouTube channel or listening to us on our various podcasts or tuning into our publications. You may also find various thematic events and book discussions under IMPRI under the hashtag Web Policy Talk Series. And thank you very much for joining in. Wishing all of you a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.